Hello, all, and welcome to my blog. I'm happy to meet you all. This time, meeting for a different topic. So, I really wanted to discuss about public versus private schools. So, I've had a lot of discussion with a couple of other parents, and a lot of again, as the time of February comes and the open enrollment season has just started. So, I think this has been a hot topic, and I really thought I must share my views and my experience on this topic. So if you know me, if you've been following my vlogs, I live in the state of California in US, and I have two kids. My older one is almost going to be 12 now, and she goes to the public school. She is in middle school, sixth grade. And my younger one, he goes to a private school. He is, 5 years of age, and he goes to kindergarten. So I do think that I am qualified enough to talk about this topic because I have one of the kid going to the public school and one of the kid going to private school. But I would also, definitely say that think of having like a chat with your friend, because this is one of those topics, right? Similar to a financial literacy, this is one of the topics where you're really talking about your child's life. So no one is going to give you a correct answer. That is the first thing. And the second thing, what I feel is that every kid is different. So unfortunately, there is no easy answer. But what I can do is I can probably share pointers. When I was researching, I wish I had all of this information at that point of time, when I started off. Probably I would have, made changes to how, what choices I made for my kids. So yeah, just think, take, whatever I say with a pinch of salt, just think you're discussing with your, friends and what are the points you would discuss. And more importantly, there might have been some factors you might have not considered. So what could be some of the points you will discuss or, you will consider when opting for the school? There is, again, it's never going to be an easy choice. It's never going to be a bad choice or a correct choice. It is just what works for your family, what works for your kid. So that's what I wanted to cover. So yeah, let's go into this talk. Idea on this, again, first, just quickly, definitely you must be knowing by now what public school means in US is that it is funded by the government. So these are the schools that are offered. I know state-wise there are some differences. Other states offer more option, but the state I am from California, this is the public school system that there are a lot of mechanics to it in the sense there is an enrollment process which happens, but the basic qualification is that you are a resident. Again, it doesn't matter if you own a home or you rent out a home. It just only means that you stay in the geographical location, and you do have a right to a school if you stay in that location. And there are school zones which are set up based on the location that you stay, and that becomes your very basic eligibility to apply for any public school. So, always public school is always available for you. So, it is your right that, you get a seat in the public school. So this is what it means by public school. Whereas, as the name say, private school, now, there are many reasons why people choose a private school, but private schools are not really funded or aided by the government. There are independent organizations which run private schools. Of course, they are paid, so which means that in public school you don't pay a lot, but private schools are paid. So that's what it means by that. The basic premise of this topic. Okay, now let's delve deeper into the topics. Now, I'm going to keep this, more, a short one because I want to just give an introduction to this topic. I will definitely make more videos later to, delve deeper into each of the topic. Each topic in itself requires a lot of time to discuss. So we'll definitely go into that in the later videos and, let me know on any specific topics you want. But I want to cover the basic if you say it's a 70-30% use case, right? The 70% comes from these four factors. That is, what is the cost comparison? What is the curriculum differences? What is the feedback loop between both the systems? How do they vary? And the peer group. So let's go into each uh, of them one by one. Okay. So now this is probably an important topic I like to talk, because this will be a no or a no go for most of the people. So, as I mentioned, private schools are not free. You have to pay for them. Now, the state that I know, so California is one of the states where there is a high inflation. It is the cost of living is very high. So I know this may look like a bigger numbers here, what I've put, but generally that is the, cost, or, that is really the market rate of education in over here. So a private school can roughly range anywhere between 2,300 to 2,500 USD per month. Again, since there are different kinds of private schools, some are more the top end private schools, there are the lower end type private schools. But keep in mind, this is more a starting value what I've provided here, because this is more at an elementary level. And as you keep going to the higher grades, the fees also increases. So this is not really, a fixed amount, but this is to generally give you an idea, especially if you want to budget and you really know that, okay, is this my cup of tea? Is this really the lane that I want to go down? So this helps you to gauge. Now, one special note here, and from the experience, I want to talk, looking at generally at other from our peer circles, especially if you have two kids. This is one thing that you really want to think really hard on, because I know a lot of parents, send their first kid there, and what really happens is that they end up just following it, and then when the second kid comes along, it becomes a bigger challenge because everything is 2x time the amount. So this is something that you definitely want to give a thought again. As I said, it depends upon your family situation, but if budget is a constraint, considering your family size and the other constraints that you may have, then definitely I would say that private school is a big financial commitment. It is not going to be a simple commitment. So it is going to be a bigger financial commitment. So you should definitely be mentally prepared, and start really saving up for this, or start at least putting your resources in that direction. Again, there's a different way of seeing that. If money is really not a constraint, right? If you really come from a family where you think affordability is not an issue for me, this is okay. I'd rather not cut down probably my family vacations, 2 3 family vacations, and I put it into my kids education. Then it's definitely the other parameters which become important to you, when you pick. But please do consider this. Now, on the other hand, as I mentioned already, public schools are completely free. They are aided and funded by the government. The teachers are paid by the government. It comes from your, the taxes that you pay, and so many other, sources it comes from. But every school district is having funds. They allocated funds. It depends a lot of parameters. Again, there are some complications also due to that, but again, I don't want to get too much into the details of that, or because currently in California, even the food is provided free. A lot of things, they did a change after the pandemic time. So this is one, but there will be some very very minor donate. Especially there's a donation. There is back to school stuff that you donate. So yes, you can feel free, but again, there is absolutely no force on parents that you have to these are not like mandatory donations, or you don't have to mandatorily get stuff like the teacher sends out at the year end. They send you a big list, and you get things, you donate school supplies and things like that. Occasionally there are field trips, and those field trips also, they're sometimes funded either by the school or by the parents itself. So there are these things, but again, for most part, I would say that, it's completely free. So, it gives you a peace of mind to really, if you're not able to afford it, it gives you a peace of mind, to go ahead with it. So that's there. Now, having said this, please also keep in mind, especially when your kid is, the lower ages, meaning the kindergarten, I guess up roughly up to the third or the fourth grade, you will definitely have to also factor in the after school care options. Now, if you ask me, is after school care mandatory? No, definitely not. If you are in a situation where you can pick up your kid, so generally school doesn't matter whether it's a public or a private, this is the common thing. Generally, school gets over, anytime between 3 to 4, probably around that window. Especially, once you go on to the first grade onwards, that's the time window. Now, if you are in a situation, you can, like, pick up your kids, you can take care of them, then that's perfect. That's awesome. You really don't, have to worry about this. You can completely ignore this. But again, considering the situation where, let's say both the parents are working, and this was our situation too. Both of us work and we have commute. It does take, especially in a place like California where, traffic is a major factor. You have to come back home. You really, you can't really get to the kid at that time when the school, finishes for the day. You really have to, think of some after school care options. Now, as I mentioned, this is especially very, very important, when at least the kid reaches third or fourth grade, because by third and fourth grade, you get many more options. There are a lot of options, things start getting a little easier in this aspect, at least after that phase. And that's what I feel. But please do factor in that fees. Now, the only difference here for aftercare and, in public versus private, I think both of them offer some kind of an on-site after school care. Now, when you say on-site, you really don't need to come there, pick your kid and drop them to another after school. They're on campus. Generally, they are on campus. But this can range anywhere between 500 USD to 800 USD. Typically, the pickup times are, within 6 o'clock. So, they're probably taking care of the kid roughly, say, 3 hours after the entire school day is over. So that's what they do. They do offer assistance with homework. Some of the after schools also, offer enrichment clubs. Again, they probably be an additional fee to that. But at least I know that private schools definitely offer enrichment clubs. The other ones in the public school, there are two options really in a public school. One, you go for the on-site one, or you can also go to your private your own, private after school care, where, they come, they will pick up the child. They have normally like teachers who, making sure the kids are still small at that age, right? They're 5, 6, 7. So they really pick them up. They have some sign-in mechanism. So, your child is in safe place, it's moving one place to the other. This is definitely a nightmare when the kid is starting up in kinder, because it's the first time your kid is really, not with you. You're not the one dropping or picking up them. But there are well-established systems which folks have done, over a period of time. Those have worked very well. So personally, my daughter, I had that, I had another, I had signed up with third-party providers. So they used to come to the campus. They used to pick her up from school. They used to send me a sign-in notification. I know she's been checked in at the aftercare. And then after that, they used to really give, they used to curate their own packets, academic packets, and, they used to do play with Legos or, some kind of motor skills or, something to keep the kid occupied. And I used to get back probably 5:30 or, 5:30 within 6 o'clock and pick up my daughter. So these are just the point I want to bring is that if this is your situation that you need to opt that, please consider this additional cost. Especially this will become a little more burdening if you're going to a private school where you're also spending. So roughly your commitment will be somewhere around 3,000 USD to 3,500 USD. So that is the range you are looking for. So keep that in mind as well, and when you factor in the cost. Okay, now the curriculum that we want to talk, as I mentioned, this is a very deep topic. A lot of people, ask on this, they are very, they really want to know. But I could give, I'll probably share some pointers, some very high level pointers from my experience. So as I said, right, since my daughter did the public school and my son is going through private school, and again, probably my feedback is an elementary school level. For middle and higher, remember the challenges are always more. Both get tougher. The public school and the private school both get tougher. So it is, and it's more pronounced in STEM and more other subjects. So that's why I'm keeping this to a very basic discussion. Okay. So the main difference here is that in private school, most of the curriculum or the syllabus is set by the school. So now, when it is set by the school, what that really means, is there any pros and cons to it, right? So, if you ask me, my personal experience, definitely private school curriculum is more rigorous than public school. Now, I don't mean to say it in a way of demeaning way of that, public school is inferior or anything like that. I only mean when the course coverage comes and the topics they do and the stress given to each aspect of the topic, it definitely feels they are at least a year advanced than, their peer of the public school. This is something definitely, I have seen that. That's what they do. But again, is there any con of this? Yeah, definitely, right? Because if you want to really, once you establish an ecosystem, right? Let's say you're really moving to a different city or moving different state. Now, please remember that private schools are, though they're spread across the country, it doesn't adhere to a common standard. It doesn't adhere to one common standard, meaning it is very autonomous in the sense that the private schools follow their own curriculum. So what happens if, let's say, I'm going in a school XYZ, and I move homes or I move the state, then you may not have that XYZ school in the place that you move. So that sometimes, again, it's not such a major problem, but the point to remember here is that since they follow their own curriculum, there is, you will have some trouble to find that. So that is one con that I see. But if you ask me, after going to a private school, is it easier to switch to a public school? Yes, definitely. You will, as I mentioned, I always feel they're 1 year above what a public school teaches. So definitely it's going to be easier to catch up. But the other way around, again, I feel it is not so easy. I've rarely seen people switch. I mean, it has happened. I know of examples where, people third grade, fourth grade, they do go to private school at that level. But there is a lot of catch up. There is a lot of catch up which happens. So that is one thing. Now, coming to the public school, they have to adhere to state standards and educational guidelines. Now, as I mentioned, I'm from California. In California, you have California Common Core. So California Common Core is the syllabus or the standard set by the state of California. Definitely, if you go to a different state, you will have their Common Core standards or their educational standard. Now, the point you need to remember is this, and what I really like about public schools is that all of this information is available to you. All you need to go into is in the educational website or your school district website, or you need to go to your state website where you will be listed. Okay, if it is California Common Core, what are these? What are the standards for math? What are the standards for English? So it's definitely elaborated in a very nice way. So you know what it is and it is given to you. So you always have access, and generally all of the material is free. So you have access to everything. So on a larger level, they do follow, adhere to the state standards and things like that. But now, is there any downside of this? Now, see, public schools do a lot of things, especially, we've had, like for math example, we have California Common Core, the math book, we have had Benchmark Advanced, we have TCI for social studies. We have a lot of, curriculums. But where I have found, and this is more you could take as a personal challenge I have found is that, especially in the area of English, uh, I have felt that there is no really a textbook or a standard to follow. So this is where things get a little hard for me, because figuring it out, what really the kid needs, because um, in the elementary school level, English is a lot of attention is paid to the subject of English, right? So they start off with probably small, spellings, reading, they go on to writing, grammatics, writing, and the writing gets, styles of writing, and it gets more complicated. Now remember, the better your kid understands the English language, the better they are going to be at all subjects, because their comprehension power is going to really improve. So I think the real test of it comes like, how well the kid can understand the non-fiction really when compared to the fiction. Probably, again, this I'm talking about roughly like, third grade level or things like that. Now, in that, this is where I have a problem that, I found it very hard, since most of it is curated by the teacher. And this is one of the issue I had a public school, that many of the curriculum, the subject, or the kind of homework that is provided, there was definitely some predictability in subjects like math, but in subjects which are not math, there is a lot of, it really depends upon the curation by what the teacher picks. And sometimes it is your luck. One teacher may do more. Some teacher may just not be so rigid. They may be more flexible. They may not do that much. Again, it's not to say one is working hard, others not. It's not that. It's just that everyone comes from different schools of thought, right? They come from very different schools of thought. They deal with every student differently, because just, keep in mind that they see a lot more kids, right? So it is again always, as I always feel, education is always 80% 20% rule. You cater to 80% of the student, the remaining 20%, either they can be too much above the average, or they can be too below the average. Education doesn't cater to that. So again, it's a very, I don't want to get into the philosophy of it, but this is always education is, right? So this is where I've had, I see this little bit as a gray area. But now, coming on the other hand to private schools, what I really probably I like it, because again, from me growing up, I was grown up. I grew up in India. I studied in India, and my schooling happened where we knew at the beginning of the year what all we had to do. So predictability is something that I feel I can do better on, right? If you give me a surprise test, I would get so nervous that I wouldn't do well, right? But if you tell me there's going to be a test, I'll probably prepare. But again, it may be my mindset on, how I am wired. But what I really like is that when I sit with my son to, help him with this curriculum, I really know, because they do have a curriculum, again, I'm not getting into any particular private school syllabus, but on most part private schools, they kind of follow Saxon math, or they must be following their own. There are schools which prepare their own phonics kids. There are schools which follow core knowledge. Again, there are different subjects I'm talking about. I know I'm diversifying the topic here, but keep in mind, it is definitely more predictable. You do get a very good sense of what is going to happen in that academic year. If you are listening closely, they do a lot of really deep dive sessions where they go into what really happens. And the homework is also provided to reflect that. So that predictability aspect, though it was more rigorous, I think that predictability aspect is what I really, I really like, because I mean, I feel more secure. I know my kid, where I can guide my kid if my kid is struggling. So again, as I said, this is a very deep topic. We can go in more into that. But I just want to add a quick note over here on homework. Now, definitely, if I see my kids, definitely I see that in private school they do have a lot more homework. It's again because the nature of the homework, and as everyone knows, right? As the year goes, there is definitely more homework. Now, where I find this, and something I want to really share from my personal experience, and it may be a little selfish as a parent also, but please keep this, into consideration. You may be able to aid your kid when your kid is in a lower grade, but as the kid goes to the higher grades and especially enters to middle school, it's not really easy to impart and the similar kind of assistance you can get, because remember, like, you may not be an educator, right? So when the kid really comes, and again, the teaching methodology is going to be very different. So again, combination of two factors, just that. when the kid does homework, there will be a commitment from your side. So really, if you think as the kid grows older, you will not be able to commit for it to help and aid your kid, then definitely I would really say that, you must consider this in private school, because as the year goes, you will have to sit down with your kid, a lot more. That is one. Now, again, I don't want to take off the complete credit from the kid as well. See, this is actually, one thing with the homework, and one hack I have found as a parent is that homework was always a gauge for me to identify, is my kid, a good candidate for a private or a public school, because that's what I found. Because keep in mind, in public schools, you really don't get penalized that hard, because, the even for things that you're not able to do, they're more, even the kids are able to cope up. So especially if your kid is not really a self-starter kid, right? I mean, like if you take my own kids, I have one of my kid is just too excited about homework. The other one is just least bothered to do homework, and I need to really push them to do that. So that is also an important factor, that, when you have homework, it a lot depends upon the kid's mindset. It really depends upon, is the kid a self-starter? Are they really able to, be very disciplined and complete their homework? So then you know that, how this commitment will really work out for you. So, it also gives a gauge, because in private schools, there is definitely more commitment on the kid and on the parent. So if you really think that, and this is probably a good gauge for you to know, hey, will my kid, which system will my kid do better for, right? So that is going to definitely help you decide. Okay, now feedback loop. So this feedback loop is really right. I like to talk about, how are kids really graded? And as we know, as they keep growing older, they're it gets more rigorous on the grading. But again, this is another elementary school level what I wanted to talk. Now, I did feel definitely, as I mentioned in my earlier slide also, in private schools, definitely I feel there is more predictability. They tell you when the tests are. They give you, now there are two kinds of grading systems, one an absolute where you're given a number, right? Like 9 on 10, or, 50 on 100 or whatever. And there's another kind of a grading system which starts from the scale of 1 and goes up to 4, 1 being the lowest, meaning the standard not met. And 4 is really, you're like a kid is a super achiever or doing more than what the grade level accepts. And 2 generally means, you're not meeting grade level. And 3 is ideally where you want to see your kid, which means that, no red flags, you're meeting grade level, you're going, well with respect to what's taught. And that's where you're expected to be. Which again, this doesn't mean that, if you're too, you're miserable or what. Kids will definitely have twos here and there as they go along, in which, they get better. Now, this is where I felt that private schools, the test evaluation, they're immediate, they're more, there are more number of tests which are conducted. There is very predictability, like for example, that, okay, every Friday I'm going to be tested on math, I'm going to have spelling, I'm going to probably have, another test. So you will definitely be given what is there. Now, if you ask me, do you really specially need to prepare of it? Ideally, you're not supposed to be prepared, because it's all going to be application oriented. But definitely you do get time to, revise your facts, like brush up and things like that, which helps the student, especially if your kid is having anxiety on tests, this definitely helps. Now, where I found public school, again, they do have tests too. They actually have weekly tests. They actually have three kind of tests. They have weekly test, they have a district provided test, and they also have a state provided test, which means it's not one point which is testing you. The class tests are provided by the teacher. Every teacher provides, normally curates their own test. Again, it's not really like a standard kind of a test. The school district provides you a test to evaluate where you are at the start of the school year, the end of the school year. And on the end of the school year, again, from California state, it is called as CASP. So you do have a test, which this I think roughly starts around third grade. They do, there is some runway that, the kids get to prepare for it. But there is a state testing which happens, which is really a very good indicator of where your kid stands academically. It's a very good, and it's quite detailed. But The only thing that I feel is that the feedback loop is probably, a little more clear in private schools. Again, I have different kinds of experience with public schools. I have had teachers who have been extremely helpful, have requested them for extra Zoom sessions. They have been very kind and accommodative, especially if my daughter was struggling, with certain things. So I wouldn't say that, it really is teacher dependent, how much your teacher is vested in your student, how much your student is also interested, and how much your student participates in the class. That also, how much and okay, also how much you are eager or cognizant of the fact that how your kid is faring. I mean, again, see, I don't know if it's a mindset that, people say every, flower blooms at its own time, and yeah, all that is fine, but then you really need to nurture the flower and the plant, right? That has always been, my philosophy, that, you really need to know what is happening. At least at elementary school level, you need to know what is happening, because this really helps you to find the kind of help your kid needs, right? That is very important for your kid, not to, to really, to go into a direction where, they would at least, strengthen whatever is there, at least their strong skills, and, try to get help on what they are weaker. But again, the fact being said is that the more interest you show, generally, that's how much response you're going to get, right? And this is more so true in public schools. I mean, I have had wonderful help from wonderful teachers. I've got, great amount of assistance. Now, with private schools, what I would say is that, since, there is a strong curriculum to follow back, there's always a place that you go and look into. You do definitely get a feedback, a communication from the teacher, but pretty much it's instantaneous. If your kid is struggling in an aspect, because the test results are also sent to you. You do get, a constant feedback loop is always established. You are pretty much aware, of what happens. So yeah, that is on the feedback loop.
The next aspect that I would like to talk about is the peer group. Now, yeah, but this may not seem like a very significant point, but this does make a huge impact on the experience you're going to have. Now, how does this really vary from a public and a private school? Now, keep in mind is that public schools are generally more diverse. The kind of the peer group, the kind of friends that your children would meet, or the kind of parents that you would, you will meet throughout the course of your kids' tenure over there will be a more diverse population. Now, this is not necessarily a bad or a good thing. It is just that I personally feel that, definitely dealing with a more diverse population helps us to really get a taste of the real world. And somehow, in my experience, what I have seen is that, the public school kids are definitely more, streetwise, because they really know how to handle different situations. They have seen different situations. They do really, it's a reflection of the true world, and they get more attuned to that. So that is definitely one thing. Now, whereas you see that generally what happens in a private school, again, considering an 80-20 kind of a 80%, 20% kind of a rule, is that generally there is less diversity, because generally people of the similar socio-economic background or ethnicity try to group together over there. Probably a little more affluent people also, because of course, they do pay a lot more, and it does matter. Now, this can have its own advantages too. Especially that, if you are having if you are a parent who's super anxious about your kid, who wants your kid to grow up in a very protected kind of environment, this probably helps, because you can also predict the kind of issues which can arise when you come from the same background. So again, this is not a good or a bad thing, but what I would say is that it really depends upon your mindset and how you really envision your circles to be formed. So this, of course, adds value in that aspect, and definitely this is another factor you need to pay attention to.
Okay. So there are a couple of aspects more I would really like to talk about, like, the classroom size. Definitely, public schools are bigger classrooms, private schools are smaller classrooms, and things like that. Now, as I mentioned, I will definitely do some more follow-up videos on this because this is a big topic. This is a vast topic that, that needs to be covered. I hope you like this, what I have shared, and please do feel free to drop in your comments, tell me really what you would like to know. I mean, I'm more than happy to share more of my personal the experience that I had, and really what helped me to decide what works one way or the other. So yeah, all the best in making the choice. As I said, it's not really an easy choice. This is something that you really need to sit down, write down pros and cons, and at least that's the way I did it. But really, this is definitely, it is a topic worth breaking your head on. So yeah, so definitely, yeah, and please do let me know your comments. I hope you like my video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.